Thank you. So, if you've come here before, you know I love to talk about my father, because my dad and I, we had a very complicated relationship. And actually, today is his 3rd anniversary when he died. So, today, he died on March 18th, 3 years ago. And I don't know how I feel about that, but that's what happens. And when I hear people say all the time, like, "Oh, my dad's my best friend," I'm just like, I don't understand that. Like, I'm thinking, like, what is your criteria for a friend? Is it like, they have to be on AOL, they got to drive a Ford Taurus, and be married to my mom? Is that your criteria? So. My dad wasn't around much when we were growing up because he was a lawyer and he worked like 80 hours a week, and so I didn't really get to see him. So and even when he was home, I always got the sense that I was bothering him, and so I never got the sense that he loved me. But my mom, if you asked her, that it was a different thing. She of course thought my dad loved us, and she would prove it in a birthday card. She would say, she'd sign love from your mom and dad, and then she'd say, well, it's from the both of us, And that didn't make me feel any better, And so he would come home on Saturdays. He'd work a half day on Saturdays. And I remember this one Saturday, he would come home around lunchtime on a Saturday, and he would take us out to lunch. And we kind of looked forward to it. But in the morning, before my dad came home, my mother would make us do chores around the house. Now, I think my mom was a very angry person, even though she'll deny it. She was a very angry person. And I think one of the reasons she was so angry is because my dad wasn't there to help her. And so she would, I knew this was true because I would hear them fight at night. And they would fight over like 3 things. They'd fight over my dad not being home enough, money, my dad not bringing a check home, and then my mom would say this. She'd say, "Bob, I am so tired of being the bad guy." Because she had to be like the one who disciplined us. So she was angry about that. And so it's Saturday morning, and the chore that we're doing is we're cleaning out the garage. And it's a beautiful Saturday morning, and we had a 3-car garage because we lived in a big house, and the garage was attached to the house. And the 2 of the doors are up, and it's sunny, and it's May, and the birds are chirping, and it's sunny out. And what is this? I'm sweeping. I'm sweeping the garage. I'm sweeping the garage, and my mom comes out. And now, all my brothers and sisters, I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, we're all cleaning the garage. And of course, we didn't want to clean the garage, so we're like, we gave my mom a hard time, but we're cleaning the garage. Now, she comes out, and she looks at us, and she says, "Your father's not coming home for lunch today. He has to work late." Now, I'm only 10 years old at the time, and I say, "Well, Mom, it doesn't seem like Dad ever wants to be around us." And she says, "That's not true. Your father is very proud of you kids. He is. Whenever we go out with other people, he's always talking about you kids." And I said, "Well, if that's true, Mom, why doesn't he, you don't need to say that. Why doesn't he just say it?" And she said to me, she goes, "Your father loves you kids. He just can't express it." And I knew, even at 10 years old, that I was headed for therapy. And I remember, like, that's one of those things when you're a kid, you're like, that's a weird thing for a parent to say, and then you store it, and you go, my first visit to the therapist, this is the first thing I'm going to bring up. So, then I say to my mom, I say, "Dad should really say that to us." And my mom snaps. And she goes, "You don't know how hard your father works. Your father works very hard so you can live in a great big house and go to a good school. There are kids that have half half as much as you, and they are grateful. You should just shut up and be grateful. And then my mom stormed off, and she slammed the door. And my brothers and sisters, we all looked at each other, and we waited to make sure she was gone. And then they started in on me. You made Mom angry. You've got such a big mouth. You got us in trouble. And that was the beginning of me getting the reputation in my house for having a big house, big mouth. And that, of course, led to a career in comedy, right? In improv. But by high school and college, things got really worse between me and my dad, because he started to steal other people's money. He was a lawyer. And so he'd put these big deals together, and he'd tell people, oh, I'll get hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he'd say, okay, I'm going to buy a building on Lakeshore Drive. And he'd never buy it. And the state of Illinois considers that a crime. And we never understood where the money went. And to be honest with you, had some of the money come my way, I wouldn't have felt so angry about it, but it did. So $3 million later, my dad gets indicted, and he goes to jail. He goes to prison, actually, for 33 months. And they find him guilty on embezzlement and mail fraud. And this does nothing in terms of helping our relationship whatsoever. So I'm thinking, before my dad went to jail, went to prison really, and by the way, we could never say, even in the family, that he went to prison. We would say he's gone away, or if we were really brave, we would say, oh, he's in Terre Haute. But we would never say prison. And when my dad came out of prison, nobody, and by this time I had been in therapy, I had been in group therapy, and with this crazy little therapist who all he wanted to do, he would say really outrageous things, you know, to piss you off. Like he'd say something, sounds like you and your mom and your dad are having a three-way. You know, he'd say stuff like that. I don't know what kind of issues he was working on, but that's his. So my dad's home from prison, and nobody, once he got out of prison, it was like, let's forget your dad did 33 months in a prison in Terre Haute. Well, so I'm in therapy, right, and of course I have this reputation of having a big mouth in my family. And so one night there's this big party, my brothers and sisters are all there, my mom's there, and I'm sitting at one end of the table, my dad's sitting at the other end of the table, and we're having dessert and coffee, and I say to my dad, gets kind of a lull in the conversation, you know, and I say, hey Dad, how was prison? And my mom totally freaks out. She's like, don't. She's trying to change the subject, right? No. And then my dad, his face lights up, and he says to me, oh, those were the happiest years of my life. And I'm thinking, wait, you got married and you had 5 kids, but prison was the happiest day of your life. No wonder I don't feel loved. So I'm thinking back of all this, and I'm thinking about, so I get into improv comedy, and I'm thinking about, you know, my dad. And I remember him coming to one of my first shows. It was I was in my 20s, and it was at a bar called Orphans, which was on Lincoln Avenue. And I was part of the Improv Olympic, and Del Close had developed this form called the Herald. And I don't need to explain it. It's just, it wasn't very audience friendly back then. I wasn't very good. The team I was on wasn't very good, and we couldn't perform this form very well. I mean, I was awful. I was really bad. And so my dad decides to come to one of my shows, and I didn't want him to come to. And when I was in high school and grade school, I really didn't like my dad coming to anything that I did. So he comes to this show, and you have to remember, it's back in the 80s. Improv is it's not as popular as it is today. And boy, it is popular. And so the audience was pretty much the same. Like if you go to an improv show, it's like 80% improv students. And the same thing was true, but it was only 4 people. So there's 4 improvisers, and my dad is sitting at the front table, right? And it's like 9:30 on a Wednesday, so my dad's probably just come right from work. And so he's sitting like right here, and we're doing this weird thing that's like witchcraft and whatever. And, the show's over, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, I'm really excited that the show's over, and I want my dad to meet all my friends in the city, you know, because I'm still living up in the suburbs, all my improv friends, and you know, I want this validation. I want him to say, oh my God, you know, you're really talented. We always knew it. We're so proud of you. So he's out in front, and I bring my friends out, and you know, we talk a little, and then I get the courage up, and I say to my dad, I say, so Dad, what'd you think of me? He looks at me and he goes, well, it was a little over my head. And I'm 20 years old at the time, and I'm crushed, you know? I'm crushed. You know, my dad had never given me any sort of encouragement or anything like that, and now I was looking for it, and I didn't get it. And I felt really sad. I didn't know the word sad back then, so I just drank. And, but then I thought about my career today, you know, and how my dad, in the best he could do, did support me, you know, and he kind of raised us as like, you know, don't do, you know, do as I say, don't do as I do. He really admired people that could speak up, you know, and express themselves, and that's what I do. And he really admired people that followed their dreams, and that's what I do. You know, I've been doing this I'm 54 years old, and I've been doing this, you know, and he never discouraged me, you know, as all my friends moved to Los Angeles and became really famous. He never said, you know what, you know, I think you should hang it up, you know, and I was just an improv teacher here, you know, and I know that I wasn't going to get famous being an improv teacher. Think about it, there are no famous improv teachers. But he never discouraged me. He never got in the way and said, don't do it, you should stop. And because I think he had a dream, and his dream was, he loved politics and he loved the city of Chicago. He loved it. He loved them both. And he wanted to be, he followed my mom to the suburbs, and he listened to his mother, who was also worked for a politician, who said, don't go into politics, they're going to find out, especially if you're Italian, they'll say that you're connected to the mob. So he didn't do it. But he always admired me for doing it, you know? And I think tonight, you know, he'd be very proud that even though I'm not famous, and even though I don't make a lot of money, that I do this. And I see with my little 2-year-old, she does a lot of things that I'm like, I'm not proud of, you know? Like she has this Ariel dress from Little Mermaid, and I mean, it is, there's holes in it, there's stains in it. You know, I'm afraid when she goes to preschool, like DCFS is going to come in, you know? But that's the way, at 2.5, she can express herself. And as a father, which I don't know much about, because she's only 2.5, my job is just not to get in her way. Good night. Thank you.